All right, hello for Friday, August 5, 2022. This is Low Code Campfire episode 62. My name is Dale Warner. I am head of support for Plantain App, and glad that you're here or listening. This is an event we hold on Fridays at 10 a.m. Central Time. It's a meeting format, but we all get together, discuss techniques, challenges, and experiences in low code and Plantain App, and it's all skill levels welcome. This is a recorded event, and so you can find these out on youtube.com/PlantainApp under the Low Code Campfire. So do subscribe to that. We run a pretty informal agenda. We will do introductions, anybody who's new to the group, and then first call. We'll talk about anything that's you want to deal with immediately, but then we'll go around and look at our Campfire website, our feature requests, any submitted topics, and then after an hour or so, we'll go into our Afterglow segment. We turn off the recording and talk about anything that comes to mind and inspect wardrobe and things like that. Few guidelines: be nice and mute if you've got noise going on behind you. You can submit questions and topics in advance using the link that's in our emails or this QR code. So with that, hello gang. Looks like the normal gang's all here.
Hello everybody, good morning.
Good morning.
Normal might be strong, but
Yes. Well, we'll go with that.
Thanks for allowing me on.
Nobody has been voted off the island yet, although we'll consider the vote as needed. All right, so we'll go right to first call. Anything on your mind? What's important?
Frankly, I'm in deep water and hot water too, I guess. That would be probably the better phrase. And I'm still working on the maps, the map implementation that Jerry did a contribution on. And struggling with why it's not showing up anymore. Because of seeing that and thinking this is a perfect application for a job board, because that's what people do. They want to know if they can find a job near their house. I pitched it, I won it, and now now I have to demonstrate it next Thursday. So I'm really struggling with why it's not working, and I don't even know how to debug this piece of code.
Sure. So before we head that way, are you running one of the more current versions of Plantain App?
Yeah, 121.
And that's the area where we're running into problems. So give me a minute, and I'm going to look up where we were failing with that and what's our progress.
At first I was thinking, and Jerry had said in your video, Jerry, that you use forms for everything, and you just dropped everything into a static text. And I'm happy with putting that on a regular page and somehow grabbing the tokens and running it that way, if that solves the problem. And at this point, I got to come up with something because of the deadline.
So just by way of being informative, the working on the solution is the folks are active. It is in development now, right? It was waiting since last week. It's moved into development, so that's good news. But I have no indication it's going to be ready by Thursday. Are you doing this on our infrastructure, Don? Our
no, it's the app builder is copied on our server on our site.
So one of the things that I can suggest as a possibility is if you spin up if you can spin up a new site and install the older where we got into trouble versions of Plantain App, you could have an environment that would work exactly the way that would be before the issue, and hopefully it would resolve it. Beyond that, you know, if you wanted to move it off to another, you know, do another technique and not rely on our forms, you know, that's a programming exercise, but I'm just trying to throw out ways that, you know,
Sure.
possibilities.
What version are we talking about? 17 or 118 or
I think it was 119, but
119 was working,
Yeah, give me a
and it
second.
failed after 120.
Yeah, at 120 was the problem, and it works on 119. So, but you'd have to, I mean, you can't go backwards in versions. You'd have to.
Right. So I need to create a new site. On that site, loaded it up on 119, and then put all that code on there and see if
Yep.
that works.
Yep.
Got it.
Sorry, I turned up late. Are we talking about the Google Maps?
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Jim.
Just say I did have a quick look at it, and it seems to be something to do with the JavaScript in the static text box not being rendered at the right time, and not the code not being loaded. If you move I just had a very quick look. If you move the JavaScript into a text HTML element rather than a form static text box, it does seem to fire, but there's something has changed in the way, or the sequence in which the page is rendering, which is stopping that JavaScript code being picked up at the right time. Because you get what's happening is the Google library is being triggered before the function that it relies on is loaded, or there is something in the way that the static text is now being rendered on the page that prevents the function being loaded on the page. I have a suspicion, you know, if it's that, then it's going to affect other solutions which use the same trick of sticking raw JavaScript into a static text field.
So putting the everything that's in the static text in that field, putting all of that into an HTML module, turning on replace tokens, and use the token for the to build that the marker string would
should.
possibly.
Well, you can use it to get the code for enabling the Google Maps, because that's in a token at the moment. You would probably have to pick up the JSON string using JavaScript and pulling it out of the form, because the JSON string is not a token. But I think that ideally it would be nice to revert to the same process or the same behavior, where the JavaScript in the static text field of a form still renders. But if you could find a way in the text HTML module of being able to get hold of the required JSON string, then it should work. You should be able to get it all to fire.
Yeah, that's along the lines of what I was going to say. I have a working example actually of it in an HTML module. You would need to look at the because I think, Jerry, if I recall correctly, you used the pre-init events in the form to pull in some libraries, and so there might be some finagling that needs to be done there. What I have is a very different implementation, and what I recall, I did it before Jerry did his low-code cafe. And when I watched the Low Code Cafe that Jerry did, I said, "Oh wow, how much simpler that is than what I did." So that's my recollection. But I do know and I have I'm looking at right now a version of it's in 1.21 and the map is loading in an HTML module, and the points are being filtered by a separate form on the page, and it's working.
Okay, let me jump in. I can speak volumes about this. As a matter of fact, Dale, I just got off an hour and a half seminar teaching our comrade Wes Adams how to do exactly what we're talking about. I was teaching the maps, and he's using version PAA 1.18, and it's running fine under the action form mindset that I thought about. But in the process of doing it, it must be fate or just amazing that this come together at this exact time, because I literally just hung up with him and jumped on this call. So I'm really in touch with what you're going through. I really believe that the reason why I chose to consolidate everything in the action form was because I could just do it all right there, and it's self-contained. And if I need to move it to another page, I just grab the whole form and move it around. I don't see any reason in the world why what I do could not be re-implemented using the HTML form or the HTML module and my tokens if you needed to. And again, the instances that most of my installs, Don, look like this. There's an action form that has some questions on it, like who's the customer you want to, or who's the distributor you might want to plot the maps on, and I make them click a submit button, and that submit button, all it does is reload the form. As Patrick had noticed, I call some things happening in the pre-init to build this string that feeds the pinpoints on the form. And hats off to Jim for figuring out that maybe it's not a Bootstrap 5 problem. That's where Dale and I were headed down, because we blame everything on Bootstrap 5. And so it could be that one could put a form on a page and an HTML box, and the form just does the same thing. It builds stuff, might call my tokens, might not, reloads the page, has some tokens sitting there that the HTML module could extract and display the map. If you'll give me a little bit of testing time today, I'll go prove that. And it sounds like Patrick has something similar happening. But if you're in a crisis and you need help next week, let's me and you revisit on Monday early and just get you set up where you can meet your demands, because I'll be glad to jump in and help you with that.
Appreciate it. Sounds like I got two solutions: building a new site with 1.18 or doing the HTML module, which I'm going to try first, and then see if that solves it. I'm going to be jumping onto that after this.
Let me give you a third alternative, right? From our internal team. I pulled out this little snippet here, but what I gather out of it is it might have to do with the order the things are happening on the page. And so what he said was window.initmap equal function will work. That syntax will work versus function initmap.
The initmap is in the callback call right now. So you take that out and just put it at the bottom.
I'm just saying that this is the feedback that I got from our guy. It happened literally 3 hours ago. And so the way that this is being called, we might be able to reconstitute the way it's being called to use window initmap, and it may solve the issue. It's a little bit of scripting change to make it go in this current version, and it would be stable in theory from that point forward. Jerry may know more. I'm not a JavaScript guy. I've admitted this several times, but if you can reconstitute it in this format,
yeah, and nor am I a JavaScript expert under any sense. That's why I dumbed it down the way I did, so we wouldn't have to all be JavaScript experts and just kind of play inside of Google's mind, which is a scary place, by the way. But if you could make any of that knowledge known to me, Dale, where I could just do that, I'll go do the testing on it and see, because I have a 121 install right now with all the map software on it, and I've just been patiently hanging around seeing if somebody fixes it, so I didn't have to go a different route. But with Wes's issue today, he's on 1.18, and I'm sure he would like the upgrade at some point, and that would be a huge fix if we knew how to do that. But Don, don't stop your testing. Go play with the HTML module. You copy that text and that code in there and see if that has any effect on it at all. Because again, most of my code that's in that is right out of Google's manuals. I just modified it to be able to extract the data from my tables and use their logic to customize and make it fancy.
The code that you've got right now, the script says Google APIs, Google key, and callback equal init map. So Dale, what you're saying is that you remove the callback equal init map, and then at the bottom of the script you drop in the Windows window.init map, and that was the solution that you're hearing would work in the current format using a static text field inside action forms.
You want to share that screen if you've got it handy?
Oh my goodness, I've been doing stuff and you guys haven't seen any.
I'm looking at the chat window now and trying to copy and paste that out.
I'm sorry, I've been showing stuff and doing stuff. Okay. So this is what came from our front end of.
Huh. I mean, that looks like an amazingly easy fix.
Well, if
You've got the init map. That's exactly the same code that Jerry originally wrote. So the function init map is the same. So that's.
So you're just defining the function at the level of the window rather than within the context of the form. I think that's what it's doing. So it's changing the scope of where the function init map lives when the page is built. So I think it's where it says function space init map. If you just rewrite that as window init map equals function. Yeah, just comment out the line 17.
Yeah.
And remove the closing brackets on line 16. That is what they've suggested. So fire that up and see if that works.
So window, where'd it go?
Yeah, we should have a map on the screen now, but
the other thing
yeah.
I noticed, in what I was reading was it said that the reference to the Google the Google source should be after the window init map. So lines 6 through 9 should be after lines. Well, the thing that begins with 16. I did a quick try with that. It didn't seem to make any difference, but I hadn't tried the window init map equals function.
I see.
So if you want to move that down afterwards, see if that helps.
If you move that, I'll just move it all the way to the possibly to the very bottom of the page, but yeah, right there.
At least there.
Look at that.
Got a map.
Look at that.
Cool.
Nice.
Well, this call was worth the admission fee, wasn't it?
Well done.
All right, so this page has a working example, and I will post it here. So if you have access to Campfire, you can get the script that we just did. I can paste that script out there as well. If that would save you a step. Do you have access here, Don?
Yes.
Okay. So.
And while you're doing that, I'm doing the exact same thing on my site. It's not yet working. I'm gonna have to go in and look at the Campfire code and see why it's different.
Hmm.
And the Campfire is on 121, or is it older?
It's 121.44. Yep. So all up to date and
Cool.
hot fixes applied.
All righty. Well, I'm still doing something wrong, but I'll go through the code, try to figure out what's going on. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Don, I can tell you this, and then I'll back out. But I will tell you that Google's not friendly. If the map works, you see it. If there's something wrong, you don't see it.
Right,
It doesn't
right,
intermit.
right.
It's just like they go, nope, don't like it. Don't even let you have it. You know,
And that's
with
the
no error
killer
message.
is, making an assumption that it would be easy and then not even knowing how to debug the situation. So
Yeah. I have really grown
So-
to know that if in that static text box, if I have some good working code, I copy and paste that out to a notepad or somewhere, because I will jack it up every time, tear it up, mess it up, break it somehow. And I don't even try and research it. I just load that good code back in and start again, trying just to, small bites at a time with Google Maps, very tiny bites at a time when you make changes.
got it.
When you see something that works, save that somewhere so you can revert back to it. One French bracket, one semicolon, it's broken and it's not coming back.
No, true.
Yeah.
So
All right.
in looking at the notes from our front end developer, he mentioned that they did some changes that had to do with security and script execution order reliability. So I mean, there were differences, right? And I hate it that something that works in one version, you have to constitute slightly different in a new version. I suspect the scripting that we just did would also be backwards compatible, right? But I think what we're seeing is that doing it in this window init map formulation is going to be recommended and be more stable. And so you, like Jerry, for you, as you bring your customer up to date, you would need this slightly different formulation to
Right.
I think our answer is we're not going to go back and make it work so that the old script will work exactly the same, because there's some stability and security issues involved. But if you're nodding your head that this is a fine solution, I think what that amounts to then is we're going to call off making this doing anything further on this ticket, the things that got broken.
Now this is perfect. And I'll do the backwards compatibility testing today as well. And again, Don, my offer stands. If time starts crunching down on you, don't hesitate to reach out to me personally, and we'll work together. That's what I was doing with Wes this morning and got him through it. I bet it wasn't this problem, but again, once we find out just exactly where you're got the map disturbed, we'll fix that and you'll be home free again.
Great. Thank you.
No worries. Okay.
All right. So you got a week to bring it in, Donna.
That's right.
Okay. Thanks for jumping in and letting the group help you. Right. All right. So I have to start over. I didn't have any video going earlier, so no, I'm sorry. It's all. We were on first call. We're still. What else is going on? I will mention, if you didn't catch it, that we've added live help to our community plananapp.com. I mentioned it on Local Cafe a couple of days ago, but you'll notice up in the top now we have this live help. And if you click it, we have a series of openings where we publish sessions where we're going to hold office hours. And so you can see these, and if you log into this, you can sign up for them in advance. If nobody signs up, we're not going to be there. But this is intended primarily for our academy people and newbies, but we're open to help, right? So if you sign up in advance, you can get some live help. Be from various members of the support team, but it's just an open option for you. And at least one of maybe we can get a testimonial, at least one of the people on board here has taken advantage of that already.
Dale, I've got a solution for the row click. It's Anthony here.
Hi, Anthony. I'm sorry. I think Matt was going to say something because he's.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just I barged my way into a session and fortunately was able to get some very good help from the guys and greatly appreciate it. Dale and Patrick, thank you.
Absolutely, number one. Okay, sorry to interrupt, Anthony. Go ahead. What did you find?
I've got a solution for the clicking on a row to activate a button on a row.
Okay, and I'm sorry, was that a Campfire?
It was a support ticket. If you go into, I've just made a modification on your latest Campfire submission. We had the JavaScript button.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry.
the listing to pop up a new listing.
Yeah.
So if you were to click on the actual row itself, not the button, just anywhere on the row, it'll open up activate the button for that row. If you close that and you click on a different row, it'll fire that particular button for that row.
Nice. So this is just picking whatever button exists on the row. If there's only one.
Yeah, we've only got it so it picks off the first button on the row. Because I've got a site where I've got the actual button being hidden. So you can just, it's like it's mainly for used on the mobile version of my site. So you can click on a cell and it opens it up. I had Delia figure this out from Plant and App. And it was actually, if you go into the SQL, into your data source, the first step was actually giving a row number to each of the rows.
Mm-hmm.
Once we've given a row number.
So this was the original data source.
That was the original data source, and I've added in this adding the row number function.
Uh-huh.
So that'll create a row number for each of the rows. If you go into the button, in the details pop-up, I haven't got the other button working. In the details, I have to put a class into the CSS class, which says pop-up. If you scroll back up. So there's class setting. I've put in a class called pop-up. If you go back into the data fields and you go to the user ID, you can see that I've changed the text field here. If you show the source on that one, we now have a pop-up function. So this function here, when clicked, that'll go to the row and activate the button with that particular class number. And if you go into the page source, that's where we've got the function.
So
So in the page, in the SEO setting of the page, And that's the function there to actually then click on the row, that top part. So at this stage, it's given me access to click on the very first button of the stack. I haven't sort of mucked around with it to get the second row, second button working.
All right, so I'm sorry, the click on that then is, but what's being returned is the row number. So then you're using.
It's using a row number that's been created. It's a workaround that Delia came up with instead of recoding to put tokens into the classes or adding an ID number for each of the buttons for each row.
So you're using the row number to access the user ID, which is then. Oh
well,
no,
no, it's no. Yeah, we're creating a row button to then be able to activate the button that's on that particular row.
Mm-hmm.
So as you click on a different row, it then activates that particular button on that row.
Mm-hmm. So so where were you going with hidden button?
The hidden button was so that I could have a individual cell to then sort of if you clicked on one entry, it'd open up the pop-up, and then you click on the other entry, it'd open up the activate the other button. I've only got it working on one particular button on my side at the moment. Haven't got it going to individual buttons.
Okay. And I'm just wondering about whether does this need to be visible?
Well, no, if you put in class, add in hide. So I've made a hide class, which will do a display none.
Right here?
Yep.
I'm sorry, you've already made this?
Yes.
I was just curious. I mean, essentially, we can get a row click on the hidden button, because it seems like it's once you've added that functionality, why do you even need a button? Right?
Yeah.
Other than to prompt people, but.
And that's a solution. I know Mark was after that solution, try to activating a particular button.
So the purpose of the row number is to make sure that the class on each button is unique, so that you can then target that class or use that class to target that button.
I think that's correct. I wasn't the one that came up with the solution. It was Delia.
Yeah, but that's what it appears to be. So as a lot, in this example you could have used the user ID, because that would have also created a unique class. But a more general solution is to generate the number.
Yeah, I've got that. So I've got other rows, and you've got to format it, particularly if you're using union tables. So you've got to make sure you wrap it around your SQL call.
Yeah.
So I don't know the detail. Search seems to thwart this a little bit.
Okay.
So we might need to figure out what goes on when it's.
Yeah, it was a workaround instead of because the other options I was speaking to Delia about was being able to add a token to each of the put a token into the classes. So then you could actually add a number to each of the classes and then activate that particular button for that row. Or it was then having to have an ID created for each row. So like each button on that row has an ID, because it doesn't actually do that. If you looked at this, if you did a page inspect, each of those buttons don't have an ID number or actually any ID associated with it.
Mm-hmm. And ideally they would. It seems like that's something that we have.
I've mentioned that on a feature request. This is a workaround in the meantime, but obviously there might be an issue if you're doing a searching, but
Okay. So work in progress, but better than it was.
Yeah, so if I haven't actually tried what happens if you do a search. So that was the first thing I've noticed, that was not working properly when you search for it. But
And let's see if we can divine this. This one doesn't work. This one works, but comes up to ID 21. No, yeah, something goofy in there, and it's also looks like it might have thrown an error.
like ideally, it'd be great to have the ID attached to each of the buttons for the row. But then that's going to involve sort of modifying the code.
Yeah. So you guys do amazing things. Again, not being a JavaScript guy, I would need to follow instructions like this to make it happen. So thanks for doing that. And sounds like it would still be worth us getting unique identification onto the.
Seeing that problem with the searcher probably still would be, because I said if that's the case, then it's going to cause a problem for me. But at least gives me a certain function that I was after. At this stage, we'd have been able to get the button off the screen. The only issue that I then have is if you then convert it to a card instead of the row, then it doesn't work, because you're then working with divs instead of the row. So the ID for the button would be probably a better solution.
Cool. So that's kind of an update to a contribution. Is there any other, they're not new ones? Anybody else have anything for contributions while we're here? Cool. Any other first call things? Anthony, I can't remember. Are you up incredibly late, or did you get up early to talk to us?
No, I'm at a conference, so I haven't gone to bed yet. So I thought I'd sort of get in tonight, and I thought that would have been something a bit interesting for everyone, because it was just provided a solution for people.
Yeah, and when we get in there, yeah, I wonder whether filter would throw the same kind of issues. So, yep, testing. All right.
Dale, this is Mark.
Yes, sir.
Jim Anthony asked me to bring up something today that you and he were working on. Has to do with, and you'll be familiar with it, so maybe you could say more. He said, when using Bootstrap 5, having a connected form defined causes JavaScript-based actions on a button not to execute. And he was hoping you'd speak on that today.
Yes. So this was something that he reported to me. Let me pull up my reproduction because it might be useful to just look at it. Find that. So this is the working version. If we got two forms here, and you type type something in the first form and hit the button, we get a text box, we get a toast that shows up, right? The exact same setup in Bootstrap 5, submit gets nothing. And so the setup for this is, I'm not logged in here yet. I mean, it's just a connected form, right? There isn't any particular magic going on. I've just simplified down the problem that he brought up. So for example, if you have a button and the button has a connection to another form and we've given it a form name, just the presence of this alone makes this toast message fail, right? I'll demonstrate this. So if we delete this out and save it and refresh, of course, it won't be a connected form now, but at least when we click the button, we get a text box, right? A toast. So something about our connected forms logic isn't right. He happened to encounter it trying to do JavaScript, but let's see, I'm going to just reset it up the way it was. He encountered it in JavaScript. I happen to just demonstrate it through a toast, which is probably also JavaScript. And so we're seeing it. What it amounts to is it's a reported bug in our software that we've now are put in the queue for development to resolve. But since it works in Bootstrap 3, doesn't work in Bootstrap 5, we consider that a broken and we'll accelerate it to the top of the list. So I've identified the problem. I don't have a solution for it.
Thanks for talking about it. I'm sure Jim was hoping that maybe some time had passed and there would be a solution. He was anxious to get it. So apparently not quite yet.
Yeah. Jim has reported issues in the past with connected forms. I'm quite sure that the application that he has for his store relies on connected forms, and so this is something that we missed in our Bootstrap 5 testing. As with other things, I've added this to my list of things to test for future version to make sure we don't get regression on it once we get it fixed. But it is something that got out. It works in Bootstrap 3. If you could elect to go with Bootstrap 3, you could get it back functional. That's not a great answer.
Thank you, Dale.
Sure.
So Dale, I have a question of my own, if you don't mind.
Please.
It's about setting up permissions when creating an entity. You set up your properties, and then you go to the next page where you set up your permissions and who's allowed to see and edit and change and so on. And my question is, what's using those permissions designations? Is it just the pages that the Plantanet makes to interact with the entities? Is that basically where those permissions are being applied?
No, there's more to it. The actual actions that we build for you. So for example, in this case, we're talking about contact. So there would be a read contact or a update, partially update contact. All those actions will apply your permissions. So yes, it hides pages and wouldn't offer you, for example, the delete button if you don't have delete rights. But if you decided to adjust the listing to always display the delete button, it would throw an error because the delete functionality is protected by these same rules. Does that make sense, or
Okay.
shall I? illustrate.
Yeah, that makes sense. But this has come up for me a couple of times now where I'm experiencing a disconnect between setting permissions and having something being permitted. You know, like if I create an entity and I give everyone all permissions on everything, and then later I am creating an action on a button, and I say I use the Connect and App feature for create a record in that entity. Then it often fails when using it as a user, and it says this user doesn't have permissions to add
Yep.
something to that entity.
Are
Patrick,
you, yeah, are you allowing the interface to be, so there's two levels of the security there. One is what Dale was saying on the action itself, but also we have a you know, an error message action that's placed into the buttons, and that action gets updated with the roles that are allowed to do the to do the action that the button is doing. And so you have to allow your you know, override to have that actually updated.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. You said there's messages, and where are the messages put in? Or do I need to do
Yeah, Dale, I
that?
think Dale's getting ready to,
You want to do the form one?
or the form one's fine, yeah. Because that one will be in events, yeah, in the events section there. The display error message on init, those there, and then on the listings, this the same action like this is actually on the buttons.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with those. Okay.
So it's possible, two things are possible. Either you didn't override, or maybe you did override and this didn't get updated.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, I can look at that.
So a follow-up question along the same lines. If you do update the permissions in the entity, does that automatically update the default forms and grids with that same permission?
If you override, it should, I think.
Okay.
Right, Dale? That's,
Yeah, it should.
Yeah.
There's when you begin to, if let's just say, assuming that that the forms and listings that we generate for you haven't been modified, then when you override, it should completely do that. It should completely enforce your new settings. When you start to modify the forms and listings and do your own thing with it, we record. We know that there's changes in certain areas, and there is a decision made. Are we accepting the parameter that you put in, or are we? And I think this is when you start to notice and see the discrepancy report when you save. It'll tell you all the things that are different. We detected this, and you had, or we're going to do this, and you did this, and so it didn't it didn't save that. The point is, when you start adjusting the forms, then you're taking responsibility for their content, right? So some things will get applied. For example, you might, if you added a column to an entity, it might add that to the form, but if you've overridden the permissions, it might not be, it might assume that you know what you're doing. Does that help?
That does, thank you.
While we're there, just touch on the idea that it's very easy to revert back to, if you've started to modify the forms and listings and run into trouble and want to go back to default, you can delete the forms and listings and remove them from the recycle bin. And the next time you save, it will regenerate with default content. with the standard generated content, and I'd be happy to demonstrate that if anyone wants to see it. But but another thing to mention on permissions is that it is based on the roles that are present here. DNN can have other roles, and you can have people that are logged into your system, for example, that don't get the user's role. And so now, even though they're in the system and could access your pages, if you've given them permission to pages, they, from a Plantain app perspective, they don't have permissions. So you're going to want to make sure that they have the user's app role or the manager's app role assigned. It's a specific set of roles within Plantain app. Does that make sense, Mark?
Yes, that makes sense. So thank you. That answers my questions.
Sure. So any of those
Thanks for
three.
the reminder on that too.
Yep. Good question. What else? Just conversationally, yesterday there was a ticket, and I initially gave a not great answer, and then now I've given a better answer, but about using Amazon S3 storage as a place on your system to store information. And so this would be using in our add-ons, there's the Amazon S3 storage integration. Anybody using that? I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'll make use of it, Dale.
Okay.
That's where I move any file upload that I've got coming into our site, because it's a lot of medical type, could be medical type stuff. It's moved off the server and then transferred over. The way it gets in the process of transferring over, we change the file name to a unique ID as well. So that consists of moving it onto it gets uploaded to the server to begin with, and then as soon as I've got a different entity for a file, as soon as that file entity gets updated, we've got an automation that runs on a database input that will then alter the file name, update the file inside of DNN, rename it, move it across to the S3 bucket, which is then set up within the DNN itself, and then delete the file off the server.
That sounds like that you've done some custom integration, or you're not actually using the S3 storage integration add-on.
Yeah.
You are using it. Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a solution that Radu came up with when we.
So it's just got some additional,
Yeah.
the renaming of the file is an additional.
The renaming
Yeah.
of the file so that when I move it
Yeah.
over to the S3, you don't have this is this is that. It's just
Yeah.
these individual unique IDs, and it's like, oh god, what's all these?
Yeah.
And then for accessing each of the files, instead of using the normal system for providing a link to the S3 bucket, we've got a more customized file access. So every file then has a users attached to the file, and there's a permission check to see if you've got permission to actually use that access that file or not. With a logging system in the back end of it as well. So whoever whoever uploads it, downloads it, views it, deletes it, gets logs each time.
Nice. I was just kind of gauging interest. I had to work my way through setting that up. Gauging interest for doing that maybe in a cafe, showing how to set that up. So, would anybody be interested in seeing how to set up our S3 storage integration? Okay. We'll put it on the list. It doesn't sound like it's anything urgent for you guys, but it is a cool integration.
But that's just the way we're doing it for a security reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also, I mean, what else? It could also be used. Amazon S3 storage is like infinite, but you're just paying for what you use, right?
Yep.
So if you want to control the size of your site, that's another possible use for it. I think they also have tools, or maybe it's automatic to what is it, CloudFront, the ability to bring that closer to wherever it needs to be used. I suspect that could be brought into play. You can make it publicly downloadable. So there's some good reasons why you might want to do that, just in terms of easier management for your server. Cool. What else? 4 minutes, anything you want.
A rookie question about Bootstrap 5. We mentioned Bootstrap 5 a couple of times.
Please.
Again, I'm playing with the map stuff. And by the way, on my action form, I do have the map showing, which is wonderful. Thanks for that help from earlier this day. But at the bottom of the form has the generic message: the form template requires Bootstrap 5 to run correctly. And so then I followed the instructions of dropping the link line in the header, and the message doesn't go away. Is it supposed to go away?
So there's the issue here is that there's, under Bootstrap 3, we loaded the content automatically. Under Bootstrap 5, your theme has to provide it. And so what page are you, what is the theme that you said?
Well, actually, it's the page builder theme.
Yeah, so if you're going to do page builder, the easiest thing to do is in Pages, Advanced Appearance, pick default BS5 as the layout, and it will load BS5 for you. That is a BS5 page automatically. So
got it. And then I can
that should go away. So and then everything on the page has to be Bootstrap 5. So any listings have to be in data table, not legacy.
Sure.
And all the forms have to be Bootstrap 5, but that should clear that up.
That makes sense. And
otherwise, then, you buy a theme that has Bootstrap 5, it should also work.
Got it.
So, yeah, is that the only Bootstrap 5 page offered by MacNav?
I believe it is. Patrick, do you know?
Yeah.
So it's the only one I use.
That did it, by the way. And I thought that the putting in the line that Bootstrap 5's page gives you, the link line to Bootstrap 5 library, would do the trick, but it didn't. Something overwrote it. I don't know. But at any rate, that solved the problem. The message is gone.
There's adding it to wherever you were that also had Bootstrap 3 on it might also be a conflict.
Got it.
So that could be it. So cool. All right, we've coasted into the end of our hour. So even though I didn't have an opening, I will have a closing here. Let's do this. Programming note. Next week we're going to hold this on Thursday. I see we have record attendance today. So thank you all for coming. I hope you're going to be able to do it on Thursday next week. Beyond that, I will say happy low coding and remind you that we're going to immediately adjourn to Afterglow. So thank you all.